Hello everyone, this is Rig and today we are going to discuss about decline of Harappan civilization along with the late Harappan phase. So in this video we are going to go through the different causes which may have led to the decline of Indus Valley Civilization, and along with that we will also go through the last phase of Harappan culture, that is the late Harappan phase. So without doing any delay, let's get into details. Now, Indus Valley Civilization decline. Decline happened, it was initiated at around 2200 BC and it completely ended by 1800 BC. In the map on the left hand side, you can see different phases of Indus Valley culture along with the sites which existed in those phases. Gradual decline was evidenced at Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. So it did not happen suddenly that one fine day Indus Valley civilization did not exist anymore. It did not happen like that. The decline was very much gradual. Abrupt cessation of urban life at Kalibangan and Banawali. So in the sites of Kalibangan and Banwali, there was abrupt cessation of urban life. So it ended all of a sudden in Kalibangan and Banwali. Aryan invasion theory proposed and later re-evaluated by the scholars like Ramaprasad Chanda and Mortimer Wheeler. So many people in the early days considered the Aryan invasion to be the cause of decline of Indus Valley civilization, and famous among them were Mortimer Wheeler and Ramaprasad Chandra. Wheeler's skeletal evidence at Harappa and Mohenjo-daro contradicts the Aryan invasion theory. So when Mortimer Wheeler found the skeletal evidence in Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, then the Aryan invasion theory, the theory suggesting that the Indus Valley civilization declined because of Aryan invasion, was contradicted. Now, what was the Aryan invasion theory and its disputes? Initial theory was proposed by Ramaprasad Chanda in 1926. It was expanded by Mortimer Wheeler in 1947, and this theory says that somewhere from Central Asia around the Caspian Sea, a group of people known as the Aryans invaded and came into India, and that led to the decline of Harappan civilization, and also the normal people, the people that we find living in India right now, are the descendants of those Aryan people. That was a theory. Wheeler linked Harappan city names from Rig Veda to actual sites. So the first Aryan text is believed to be the Rig Veda. So Wheeler linked Harappan city names with that of the names of cities which have been found in Rig Veda. The theory lacked evidence of conflict or mass graves at Harappan sites. So theory lacked evidence, and if some other cultural people invades another culture, there will be mass graves at Harappan sites where it will be shown that a war was fought or people tried to defend, but such kind of evidence have not been found in any of the Harappan sites. Therefore, this Aryan invasion theory lacks evidence. K.A.R. Kennedy in 1997 analysis showed no major influx of new settlers with distinct physiognomy. So there was no distinct features found in the Harappan area which suggested that new people came from another land. That was the analysis by K.A.R. Kennedy in 1997. Natural disasters, not Aryan invasion, seems to be more plausible cause of decline. So people say that the Aryan invasion theory lacks a lot of evidence. No mass graves have been found. No new characteristic features among the gene structure of the people has been found. Hence, it was natural disasters, not an Aryan invasion, that led to the decline of Harappan civilization. Now, natural causes and environmental impact. What were the natural causes? Flooding theories. Wheeler's theory, flood theory versus Rex and Dale's tectonic movements theory. So there were two theories. One by Wheeler's, which was the flood theory, and Rex and Dale's contradicted the flood theory by saying that it declined because of tectonic movements inside the Earth's crust. Muhammad Rafiq Mughal, his picture is there on the left hand side. In 1997, he studied and suggested that the Indus River system was altered by tectonic shifts. So there was tectonic plate movements inside the Earth's crust, which led to the shift of the Indus River system. Hence, that was the cause of the decline of Indus Valley culture. H. T. Lambrick in 1967 suggested a theory that said that the Indus River changed its course and thus the site of Mohenjo-daro was impacted. So there was a change in course of Indus River according to H. T. Lambrick in 1967. Gurdeep Singh's pollen study from Rajasthan and climate change correlation. So Gurdeep Singh, one of the famous analysis was from pollen study, and he suggested that the Harappan civilization declined because of climatic change. So there was a change in climate and people couldn't adapt to that change, hence the whole civilization declined. Lungkaransar Lake sediments studies indicate drier conditions predating the Harappan era. So there was drier conditions before the Harappan era, and suddenly there was more moisture content in the air, and that's why people couldn't adapt themselves, and so the Harappan civilization declined. So these were the natural causes according to famous analysis by archaeologists. These were the natural causes which may have impacted the environment of Harappan culture, and thus it came to a decline. Now, economic and environmental challenges. What were the economic factors behind the decline of Harappan civilization? Decline was possibly due to overuse of environmental resources leading to ecological stress. So people of Indus Valley may have used or overused the resources which were available to them, and that led to shortage of resources, which led to ecological stress, and thus people had to search for resources elsewhere in the Indian subcontinent. That was one of the analysis by the archaeologists. Decreased soil fertility and increased salinity affected agriculture. So the fertility of the soil decreased because of the change in courses of river and many other ecological factors. The fertility of soil decreased and the salinity of soil increased, which means that sea water came into land and salinity of soil increased, and the decline of fertility always leads to decreased production in agricultural products. Hence, that was the reason behind the decline. Floods and changes in river courses disrupted trade routes and settlement. One of the most economic factor behind the growth of Indus Valley civilization was the existence of trade routes. Both intensive and extensive trade was done in the Indus Valley civilization, as we have discussed in our video regarding the trade of Indus Valley civilization. So since this have been one of the leading cause behind the growth of Indus Valley civilization, one of the leading cause behind the decline of Indus Valley civilization may also have been related to trade. That was the economic analysis behind the decline of Indus Valley civilization. Evidence of population pressure and food resource insufficiency. So the population of the Indus Valley culture was very big, and the increase in population led to decrease in food resources, and so people had to move elsewhere in search of food. Shirin Ratnagar, whose picture you can see on the left hand side, in 1981, insights on Mesopotamian trade impacts and local economic factors as the cause behind the decline of Indus Valley Civilization. So, according to her, it was the decline of trade which led to the decline of the civilization. Now, settlement and societal shifts in the late Harappan phase. What were the shifts in the society in the late Harappan phase? Settlement showed an eastward and southward shift indicating environmental or economic pressures. So settlement showed that there was an eastward shift in the late Harappan culture, indicating that there was environmental or economic pressure. Changes in pottery style was there, which reflected adaptation to new environmental or social conditions. So there was a change in the pottery making style, and that change came with the reflection of adaptation to new environmental or social conditions. There was decrease in long distance trade, with Persian Gulf trade continuing but reducing. So the trade with Mesopotamia in the late Harappan phase was almost non-existent. There was some trade between the Indus Valley and the Persian Gulf, but the intensity of trade was much more reduced than that of the matured Harappan phase. Evidence of craft specialization at sites like Bhagwanpura during the late Harappan phase. So it is not that everywhere everything ceased into being. There was evidence of craft specialization in the late Harappan site of Bhagwanpura during the late Harappan phase. The presence of graffiti, terracotta ornaments, and other artifacts point to a continued cultural activity. So, there was a continued cultural activity in the form of late Harappan phase. Indus Valley Civilization did not decline. So, it can be said that even though the mature Harappan settlements were non-existent during the late Harappan phase, but still there were new settlements with new type of cultures that may have originated from the prior existing mature Harappan phase. Now, agricultural developments and cultural continuity. Introduction of double cropping and irrigation techniques in Balochistan, we can see during the decline phase of Indus Valley Civilization, there was introduction of double cropping, which means that two types of farming or two types of cropping and irrigation would be done all throughout the year in the same field. That happened in the area of Balochistan. Diversification of crops was there, with evidence of wheat, barley, lentil and cotton in Gujarat and Maharashtra. So these were the diverse crops that were grown in the areas of Gujarat and Maharashtra during the late Harappan phase. Urban breakdown and overlap was there between the late Harappan painted greyware and ochred color pottery cultures. So these were the cultures which existed along with the late Harappan culture, that is painted greyware culture, ochre color pottery culture. The settlements like Bhagwanpura and Dadheri showing a mix of Harappan and PGW elements. So we can see that during the late Harappan phase, the Harappan culture was a mixture of different other cultures like painted greyware, ochre color pottery. Evidence of eastward and southward movement of Harappan people into Gujarat and North Maharashtra. So because of some reason, it may have been due to decreased trade or decrease in resources, people had to move towards Gujarat and northern Maharashtra. The archaeological evidences and theories. What are the archaeological evidences and theories found regarding the decline of the Indus Valley Civilization? R.S. Wist 1991 study on the decline was his analysis was that Indus Valley declined due to ecological factors. Fair service proposition of economic decline due to resource depletion. So there was shortage of resources, and that's why there was a economic decline in the Indus Valley culture. Theories of climate change has been proposed, influencing settlement patterns and economic system. So whenever there will be a change in climate, there will be change in settlement patterns and different other economic systems in a culture. Analysis of skeletal remains debunks the Aryan invasion theory. So after analyzing the skeletal remains, we can conclude that whatever may be the reason behind the decline of Indus Valley Civilization, Aryan invasion was not one of them. Studies on the sediment and pollen indicating a gradual environmental change. So when we study the sediment and pollen from the Indus Valley culture, we can conclude that there was a gradual environmental change throughout the civilization. Now next up we have the role of river systems and climate in the decline. So what was the role of the different kind of river systems that existed in the Harappan culture, and how did the climate change? The Indus and Ghaggar Hakra river systems role in sustaining Harappan civilization. So there was the role behind Indus civilization. There were the role of the Indus River and Ghaggar Hakra river systems. Now Ghaggar Hakra river system came into a decline, and that may have been one of the cause behind the decline of Harappan civilization. Muhammad Rafiq Mughal study on the river capture and disappearance of river Saraswati. So in this study, Muhammad Rafiq Mughal gives us an idea about how the disappearance of river Saraswati may have been one of the major cause behind the decline. The impact of river changes on Harappan trade routes and agricultural lands may have also been one of the contributing factors behind the decline of Indus Valley Civilization. Climatic shifts was there, leading to less predictable and harsher conditions impacting agricultural yields. So there was climatic shift, which means that the climate became less predictable and the conditions of living became harsher, and that led to the agricultural decline of agricultural production, which may have been one of the main cause for the decline. The capture of Sutlej by the Indus and the drying up of Ghaggar Hakra, as per Mr. Rafiq Mughal's 1997 study, drastically changes the impression of the Indus Valley Civilization as a major urban center civilization. So the river Sutlej was captured by the Indus, and the Ghaggar Hakra river or the river Saraswati ceased to exist, and that may have been one of the major cause behind the changing of settlement patterns in the Indus Valley culture. Now summary of the decline. The decline was a complex interplay of environmental, climatic and possibly socio-economic factors. So there was not one single cause for the decline, but it have been a complex process of environmental, climatic and socio-economic factors. No single cause fits all, with evidence pointing to a gradual rather than a sudden collapse. So the collapse of the urban culture in Indus Valley was not all of a sudden, it was a gradual collapse, and no single reason can be identified with that kind of disintegration of urbanization. The Aryan invasion theory is largely discounted due to lack of conclusive evidence. So whatever may be the reason behind the decline, Aryan invasion theory was not one of it. The late Harappan phase indicates cultural resilience and adoption rather than complete cultural disintegration. So the late Harappan phase says that there was a change in culture, but there was not a cultural disintegration. So Indus Valley culture was changed, but it did not cease to exist. The future research and excavations may provide more insights into the nuanced decline of this ancient civilization. And the decline came in the form of the late Harappan phase. So now let's get into details about the late Harappan phase. Now, what were the geographic zones of the late Harappan phase? There were several phases. In the Indus Valley culture. The late Harappan phase is said to be the declining phase of the culture. Hence, we will go through the geographical zones through which this culture was spread. The late Harappan phase spanned across five key regions: Sindh, West Punjab, the Ganga Yamuna Doab, East Punjab and Haryana, and Gujarat and Saurashtra. So these were the five distinct geographical regions where we find existence of late Harappan phase. In Sindh, the late Harappan phase is represented by Jhukar culture at sites such as Jhukar, Chanhudaro and Amri. So these are the three famous sites where we find late Harappan phase in the form of Jhukar culture, and those sites are Jhukar, Chanhudaro and Amri. The Punjab province of Pakistan and the Ghaggar Hakra Valley featured a decline in mature Harappan settlements from 174 to 31, indicating urban decline. So in the Punjab province of Pakistan, there were existence of 174 mature Harappan sites, and in the late Harappan phase that became 31, thus indicating the fact that there was a decline in the urbanization and the culture became rural centric, moving southwards and eastwards. The Ganga Yamuna Dwarf, which is the land between Ganga and Yamuna river, and it is very fertile, East Punjab and Haryana regions saw a reduction of mature Harappan site. So in these areas also there was a reduction of the mature Harappan sites. In Gujarat and Saurashtra, which is in the southern part of Indus Valley culture, the cultural continuity is evident despite the overall decline, with significant urban centers remaining. So there was a overall decline, but significant urban centers were still remaining in the area of Gujarat and Saurashtra. The cultural and economic shifts in the late Harappan phase. What were the major changes in the respect to culture and economy in the late Harappan phase? The late Harappan phase experienced a shift in pottery style, indicating a response to changing environmental or societal conditions. So there was a shift in pottery style, and that indicated that people responded to the change in climate and environment. Long distance trade with regions like Persian Gulf continued, but was reduced as seen in the presence of specialized crafts at sites like Bhagwanpura. So Bhagwanpura at Haryana was a site of specialized craft industry, but along with that, we will have to take in account that long distance trade had decreased, with only a bit of minimum trade relations surviving with the Persian Gulf. The shift in settlement patterns with eastward and southward movement was likely due to environmental stresses or economic changes. So there was a shift in settlement patterns with the entire settlement patterns moving eastward and southward, and this was probably because of environmental stresses which occurs because of overuse of resources. The period saw emergence of new crafts and technologies that included terracotta art cart frames, kilns and fanes ornament. So there was an existence of new craft technology in the form of terracotta cart frames, kilns and fanes ornaments. Notable development was there in agriculture during the late Harappan phase, with evidence of double cropping, and in the sites of Baluchistan we find existence of double cropping and diversified crops such as wheat and barley at sites like Perak, which is again situated in Baluchistan. So there was new systems in agriculture introduced during the late Harappan phase. So it cannot be said that Indus Valley people had decreased in their technological infrastructure, but the technology and every kind of cultural aspects changed during the late Harappan phase. Environmental factors and societal responses. The changes in river systems, particularly the drying up of Ghaggar Hakra, had significant impact on the settlement patterns. The climatic changes, possibly leading to a more arid environment, required adaptations in agricultural practices and settlement locations. So the environment became more arid. There was a lessening in the moisture content in the atmosphere during that time. So people had to innovate into new agricultural practices and go to new settlement locations for that. Settlements like Rosdi in Saurashtra showed expansion and rebuilding efforts, indicating resilience and adaptability. So we find a trial towards adaptation of new environmental condition in the site of Rojdi in Saurashtra, where people tried to innovate themselves into a new form of infrastructure in the Harappan culture itself. Archaeological evidence suggests continuity and change in material culture, with certain Harappan elements persisting into late phase. So archaeological evidence do not term it to be a decline of Indus Valley Civilization, but a change in material culture of the Indus Valley Civilization, with certain Harappan elements still continuing in the late Harappan phase. The onset of drier conditions in certain areas demanded shifts in pottery making and other material aspects to adjust to the new environmental realities. So according to many archaeologists, the Indus Valley Civilization did not decline, it changed into a different kind of material culture, and that change happened because people had to adapt to new environmental and economic conditions. Agricultural developments and diversification. What were the new agricultural developments in the late Harappan phase? Introduction of double cropping, improved irrigation and use of various crops for better utilization in regions like Baluchistan. So in regions like Baluchistan, there was an improved irrigation and utilization of double cropping system. Evidence of diverse plant remains have been found, including rice, barley, millets and cotton at Harappan sites, pointing to agricultural innovation. So during the late Harappan phase, we find innovation in agriculture with diversification of plant and new forms of cropping systems and irrigation systems. The presence of terracotta cart frames, kilns and fire altars in Punjab and Haryana indicates that there was technological advancement during the late Harappan phase. So it's not that everything declined, there was advancement in agricultural technologies. The diversification of agriculture and development of new crafts suggest a dynamic response to changing economic conditions. So all these new innovative practices which we find in the late Harappan phase was people's response to the changing economic and environmental condition. Continuity in cultural practices such as use of long distance trade routes a bit reduced shows adaptation rather than abandonment. So many of the archaeologists and analyzers consider the fact that since the type of material culture during the late Harappan phase changed, therefore the Indus Valley culture did not cease to exist, but there was an adaptation to a new form of material culture, overlap with other cultures, and the transformation of the Harappan society. So in the last phase of Harappan culture, we find people overlapping themselves with that of other cultures in the Indian subcontinent. So there was a mixture of cultures during the late Harappan phase. There was an overlap between the late Harappan painted greyware and ochred color pottery cultures, indicating cultural exchange and influence. So all these three types of culture, that is late Harappan culture, painted greyware culture, and OCP or ochred color pottery culture, existed contemporary to each other in the same sites, indicating that there was a cultural exchange and each culture influenced the other. Sites like Bhagwanpura and Dadheri provide evidence of a blend between Harappan and PGW cultural elements, which is painted greyware. So there was a blend of the material culture of people in the sites of Bhagwanpura and Dadheri. Evidence of eastward and southward migration of Harappan people into Gujarat and North Maharashtra suggests that there was an adaptation to changing environmental or economic pressures. So there is evidence that there was increased number of settlements in Gujarat and Maharashtra and also towards the east of pre-existing Harappan culture. Therefore, it can be suggested, it can be understood that people tried to adapt themselves to changing environmental or economic pressures. The transformation phase of the Harappan civilization was marked by both continuity of urban practices and a gradual shift to rural adaptations. So the transformation was marked by the continuity in Harappan cultural traits as well as adaptations to the new form of settlement, that is rural culture. So from urban phase it shifted to rural phase. The late Harappan phase marks a period of significant cultural transformation, setting the stage for future cultural developments in the region. So late Harappan phase is a phase of significant cultural transformation in whole of the Indian subcontinent. Now, overview of the decline and the late Harappan phase. We will go through a summary of the entire presentation in this slide. The decline of Indus Valley Civilization was a complex process. It was influenced by environmental changes, ecological stress, and possibly socio-economic factors. So there was not one single reason for the decline of Indus Valley Civilization, and that possibly happened because of numerous complex processes. Evidence suggests that the decline was gradual, with various regions showing different rates and manners of urban decay and transformation. So the decline was not uniform and sudden. It was very much gradual with different rates of decline in different areas of Indus Valley culture. The Aryan invasion theory has been largely discredited, with more support for theories involving natural disasters and environmental shifts. The late Harappan phase was marked by significant geographical spread and cultural shifts despite the overall trend towards urban decline. So there was a significant geographical spread during the late Harappan phase, and there was also cultural shift, and the overall trend was towards the urban decline. Adaptation in new agricultural practices such as double cropping, diversified crops reflect a dynamic social response to changing conditions. So people tried to adapt themselves to the changing environmental conditions. The cultural overlap with painted greyware and ochre colored pottery cultures during the late Harappan phase indicates a period of cultural exchange and transformation. So every kind of contemporary cultures influenced each other and people happily exchanged and transformed. The late Harappan phase signifies a transformation with Harappan society from urban centers to rural adaptations, laying the foundation for future cultural developments in South Asia. So this is a transitional phase which lays a foundation for all other future cultural developments in South Asia. So that was the video regarding different causes for the decline of Harappan civilization along with the late Harappan culture, which is a very significant transformative phase of Indian subcontinent in the field of material culture. So thank you everyone, and please support me so that I can bring brighter contents in future. And please do go through the other videos in the series that will give you a detailed idea regarding all the aspects of Harappan civilization or Indus Valley civilization. Thank you once again.